why that way? You know, saying things politically correct seems to be the way everybody wants it. Jesus, not that way. Not politically correct at all. And this one today, it's in Luke 16, starting at verse 1. We just, this week, for those that hang around us, we had a little Bible study in the park, and we're on Luke 15. And wasn't that right, 15? I think that was right. And as you see that Jesus tells stories, was it Luke 15? Was that right? Am I right on that? Anybody was there? What was it? 14? Okay, I was ahead of myself. So Luke 14 was where we're at. So Luke is a doctor. He's writing these stories about the disciples, about Jesus, and all these stories. So you know, as a writer and being a doctor, he's looking for certain things to make certain points. That's how doctors operate. So whenever you read it, well, he's using the stories of Jesus, and some of them are parables, and that's a story that may not be true, but it makes a point. And then there's stories that Jesus tells, and those stories are true stories, and they also make a point, but they're actually a true story. So I had to check, make sure that's on. I can barely hear. All right, here we go. So in 16, this is one of those you got to decide. He doesn't say this is a parable. At least here. He just says, there is a man, or there was a man. It says, there was a rich man who had a manager, and this manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he called on him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager. The manager said to himself, what shall I do? Since my master is taking the management away from me, I am not strong enough to dig. I am ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes. He summoned each one of his master's debtors, and he began saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. He said to them, take your bill, sit down quickly, and write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. His master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into their eternal dwellings. If you read this, Jesus is using an example of a manager, or an owner, who notices his manager is not living up to what a manager should. Whatever the reason, he wasn't doing a great job. Now he's going to lose his job. The manager thinks to himself, I'm not good enough to go, I'm not strong enough to go out here and dig. So manual labor is not my thing. I used to be in real estate, and the guy that trained me used to have this saying. He goes, I don't work. He goes, these hands cash checks. And it's like, wow, what a way to live, right? He goes, he just sells real estate, and it was these hands cash checks. So this guy, being in management, may have had that same kind of philosophy. I don't do manual labor. So then he says, I'm too ashamed to beg. So he's not going to go out and beg people for money. And he says, I got an idea. So he goes to all the people's houses that owes the owner money. And he goes to him and says, how much do you owe? $100. Cut it in half. Write a check right now. So he takes all this money. You see what he's doing? He's out there making deals with these people without the approval of the owner. And he's taking this money and writing it down in the books, right? that these people have paid their debt. But he cut it in half. He gave them some great discounts. But then the owner knows about it. And the owner says, wow, that was pretty smart. I like it. Now, you think, why would he like it? Because this owner was obviously wealthy. And all these people owe him money. And the way that he got rich, very possibly could have been doing the same kind of thing that this guy does. He started thinking of ways to manipulate the system, to go out and make money some kind of way. So whenever you have one unrighteous person see another unrighteous person do something that works unrighteously, they kind of like, hey, good deal. When the person in the backyard, I went back and there was somebody back there and they took a swing at me. As soon as I walked back there and they knocked my phone out of my hand, I had to hold them till the sheriff came. And they kept trying to kick me and hit me, and I would just hold them. Come to find out they were on drugs. They were very strong. And finally, I just couldn't do it anymore because the sheriff was taking a long time. They had another call about some guy choking. I'm like, what timing for somebody to choke? If you're going to choke, don't do it at the time I'm holding somebody from that's trying to kill me. So I holding this person by their arms just so they couldn't do it. And then finally, I just took my foot and just took them down to the ground and then and just held them there. Even though the wickedness of the whole thing, the person screaming at me, anger, all of that. All of a sudden, just out of nowhere goes, that was a good move. I'm like, yes, it was. But see that? It's like this unrighteous owner, actually, even though the money was taken from him, he liked the skill level of how this guy went out and made these deals. So he actually complimented him. Wow, that's pretty smart. Good move. Even though you hurt me, it's a good move. Jesus telling this story just does not make sense to a lot of people. You're like, professors at my university, they still have different ideas. Nobody really knows why Jesus is telling this for an exact reason of why he's telling the story. It almost sounds like he's saying, when you're going to lose your place, do anything to survive. That's what it comes off as. If you just read this, it's like, whatever it takes, survive. And then he goes down and he says to the people listening to him, which is his disciples and others standing around, he says, his master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly or wisely. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. I say to you, this is Jesus, I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into the eternal dwellings. What? So I'm to go out and make friends with this unrighteousness ability, and it's going to fail? But then I'll have a place to stay for eternal, in an eternal dwelling? Man, it's like, Jesus, what are you saying? If you read this is one of those things in the Bible, it's like, just take that out. Come on. When the scribes were rewriting this, it's like, couldn't you have just taken this part out? I mean, just like, this is too weird. This doesn't sound like Jesus. Now, like I said, you will go out of here having your own opinion about this, because this is like an open statement here. It's like, what is he trying to say? What is he trying to say? So here's where I'm at. I believe Jesus was sarcastic in a lot of his statements that he's made. The same, like I said, the woman about the dogs. I think he makes straight on points. I don't think he was calling her a dog. I think he was using the language of the land so that people see how silly that was, and because he eventually does exactly what she wants. It's amazing. So I think he first uses what's happening in the real life and then he shows the shamefulness of it. I believe Jesus does that. I believe that he's sarcastic. I believe he has a sense of humor. There's things in the Bible that whenever I read it, I'm like there's one example of he sent his disciples across the water, a big body of water. They call it a sea, but it's not really a sea, but it's a big lake. But they go across this big body of water, and he waits. And it says that the storm was lifting up, so they were getting scared in the boat. And it says that he was walking on the water. So he got up and was going to walk past them. The scripture actually says, even though they were frightened, he was going to walk past them to the other side. I mean, just think that mentality. It's like, dude, if they don't get it yet, I'm not putting up with them anymore. I'll meet them on the other side. So he starts walking on the water, as these guys are freaking out in the boat. And just the fact that it says he was going to walk past them, and it's like, he didn't. But the fact that was his mindset just gives you that thing of Jesus just being in your life. He doesn't forget about you, but boy, he'll let you go through some stuff if you're not going to pay attention. It's like if he's raised the dead, healed the sick, and done all these miracles, and you're going to be frightened when he tells you to go across the water, and now the waves start beating on you a little bit, and you're going to get scared about that. It's like, when are you going to get this stuff? So I just feel like that Jesus, with his sense of humor, his purpose, he has a purpose for everything. When he says this, I think he's using a real life example of how shrewd this world is in their own ways, how wise they are in their own eyes, and how they make things work because they're worried about where they're going to stay. Where am I going to stay? If I lose my job, where am I going to stay? I remember being in the beginning of doing real estate and business here whenever I moved to California, and I remember it was lie, cheat, and steal as long as you get rich. I mean, that was like the mentality of business. That was like the rule book. Just do whatever you can do to make the most money. Well, this one day, there were some guys that I began working at a real estate company over in Norwalk. And I was new to the place, but there was 2 or 3 guys. And man, they made a ton of money. They were driving the nicest Mercedes. I mean, dude, you just look at these cars and you're like, how can anybody afford these things? I mean, they were not the $100,000 version. It was the much, much more expensive ones. And I'm just like, wow. And there's 2 and 3 of them. And I'm just like, unbelievable how much money these guys have. And they're bringing loans in. I was a mortgage lender at that time. And they were bringing loans in, and they have their own processors, the people that help them do all the paperwork. And I mean, they're flooding. The desk has loan files stacked on it. I share my processor with like 5 other people. I mean, so I bring one loan in every few weeks. I mean, just every once in a while. Here's another one. Here's another one. Good job, right? If you get one a month, all right, that's good. So it's just like you see the difference. And in this world, you just do anything to make the most money. And these guys, whatever they were doing it. They had a system down. And then one day, I had my loan. Woo! Man, I was so happy. I had my loan, and I came in to the front desk where you have to check it in, and then they send it over to the processor. So I went in, and the front desk, the lady was writing out the loan file and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm sitting there looking at the desk, and then you hear, man, there is a car. There's glass windows and glass doors. And there is a car pulls right up to the front door, right to the door. Man, I'm like, oh man. I mean, off the street coming in, and then another car and another car. There's 3 and 4 cars all coming like right to the building. We're just sitting there going, whoa. All of a sudden, I mean, out of nowhere, guys with guns, bulletproof vests, helmets, everything just rushing inside. I'm sitting there going, it's the FBI. They are raiding the place. It's the craziest thing. All of these guys come in and look like military outfits and everything, but they're FBI. They all come in. These guns are pointing at us. They run through. I mean, they are all over the place. All you do is stand there. Here's the, we got cars parked at the front. You can barely get through the glass door. I will say they did. You got guys with their M16s or whatever you call those things. You got all these things. You got all this weaponry, all this gear on. And I will tell you, what is it? Rain, sleet, and snow does not stop the mill? Is that how that goes? Y'all ever heard that? Is that old school? Rain, sleet? Yeah. And neither does the FBI. Because seriously, through those glass doors walks the mailman, walks over, drops off the mail, walks back out, and I'm like, did he? Military, the FBI all around here. He just walks right in, drops the mail on the desk, is he just like, there is nothing besides what he's doing. This is my job. This is what I do. No, didn't even realize that was happening. I'm like, that's good. Rain, sleet, snow, FBI, guns, didn't matter. We're going to deliver the mail today. Wow. I was one of the first people they interviewed. Called me over to the side. The lady starts talking to me. 5 minutes goes by. All right, go home. You got it. Just tell that guy not to pull that trigger. I'll leave. I walk out the door getting my little bitty, let me tell you, remember, Mercedes, all those. I get in my little Volkswagen Bug. I'm going home, buddy. Oh, my knees are shaking like crazy. FBI was coming after those guys. It was the largest fraud event, and FHA 203K, which is where you take a building. I'm going way more into what you want to know about this. But you take a building, like a single-family dwelling, and the FHA had this program where you could go out and buy this property and make it into a 4-unit building, and they would give you the loan to do all of that. So now you took a single family, made it into 4 units. And so what they were doing was they were going out and buying it, and then they would have an appraiser go by and appraise it, and then come by later and say that the work's been done. Now it's a 4-unit building. Escrow would go along with it. Title would go along with it. They had people connected like crazy. That house, nothing ever changed. But they got money for a 4-unit building, even though nothing ever happened. It was fraud like crazy. They did hundreds of these a month. Dude, they were making bank. They were making so much money. And when the FBI came, they were there. They ran out the back. They got away for a little bit. They caught a couple of them, but the 2 main ones went to Mexico, and then they eventually, I think, tracked them down, and they spent some time. But it was the largest FHA fraud in history. I'm sitting there. Let me tell you something. There is a feeling that you get when they tell you to go home, and everybody else stayed. I was the only one, which tells me a lot, that I only started a month before, so they knew that I wasn't involved. I only turned in 1 loan or 2 loans or whatever anyway, so it wasn't like I was caught up in it. But do the right thing all the time. Just always do the right thing. It is so stressful when you've done something, and then whenever people bust you for it, and you're actually involved. Don't be part of it. Just do the right thing. When Jesus is telling the story, my interpretation of this, and I'm stressing this because I don't think anybody knows the exact reason for the story. And I've heard a lot of good people that preach this, teach this, and everybody has a little difference. But here's what I think. I think Jesus is telling you, this is the way the world operates. They love it when you go out and you just are successful any way you can. Even if you hurt them a little bit, as long as you became successful, it's like the world just sees that as, wow, look at that. You did good. And then he uses this thing. He says, let me read exactly what he says here. I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of wealth of unrighteousness. So when it fails, see, go out and make friends. You're tempted to make this kind of money. See, this is where I think he's using his sarcasm and he's being direct. You know what? You go out and do it. You want to play with the world? You want to play their system? Go out and do the unrighteous way of works, and go do your unrighteousness. Make whatever you want to make. Be successful in any way you can, like this guy did. And then you'll have all these friends that when you get in trouble, you can run to, because you helped them on the sly. But look what he says next. They will receive you into their eternal dwellings. Wait a minute. They don't have eternal dwellings. Only God has eternal dwellings. You can make as many friends here on earth as you want to. But if you're not right with God, when it comes to eternity, it won't matter. So I think God took this whole example to say you can be shrewd and wise in your own eyes, and you can do a lot of things to be super successful here. But if you are not right with God and you are not righteous in His eyes, when all your friends get together to say, man, you need to be in eternity, we're going to help you, they have no ability to do that. So I think Jesus is being straight out, sarcastic, and to the point. Go ahead and do whatever you want to, and whenever you're in trouble, they'll bring you into their eternal dwellings. You know what? He wants us to think. Everything that you do here, does it really matter if you miss out on eternity? All the good deeds that you've done, all the wicked things that you've done, all the things that made your friends go, whoa, you're amazing. What a great job. Man, you're brilliant. What does that matter if on the day of judgment, Jesus says, I never knew you. Get away from me. Yeah. You don't think Jesus is going to say that either, do you? People don't teach that stuff. When Jesus says, I never knew you, away with him. I mean, that's bad. But Jesus loves everybody. He does. And He loved you enough to give you an entire lifetime to choose to love Him. But guess what? It would be hell in heaven if you were in heaven and you didn't love Jesus. It would be, you're stuck with Him for eternity. So He gives you a lifetime to decide, right? I'll finish on this. It's not going to be a long sermon. I'm actually going to finish on time. There's other versions of this. There's some people that say that what Jesus actually meant was that make friends with people here on earth. So whenever you get in trouble, they'll help you. Make friends and do good or wise things to help other people, so that the Christians and the people who are going to be in heaven can actually pray for you and with you. I don't see any of that. I know there's other interpretations too. Some are saying that Jesus, when He's telling this story, is telling you how business works. I don't see that either. I mean, we know that how business works. It wasn't a surprise to us to see that. So just when you go out and say, why did Jesus say this? You know what? We don't really know. We can tell you by the verse 10 says, he who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much. And he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is also unrighteous in much. So if you're going to be unrighteous and go out and do unrighteous things for just some little stuff, you're also going to do that in big stuff. That's why I tell people, don't tell little lies. Because if you're unrighteous in telling little lies, you're unrighteous in telling big lies. So if you're afraid to tell somebody the truth because of something small, you ain't going to tell them the truth when it's something big. So Jesus is saying, if you're unfaithful in these things, you're going to be unfaithful in the bigger things. So decide what your goal is in life. Do you want eternity? Live like that. Please God. If you're not interested in eternity, please the world. Have as many friends as you want to, because that's what you have here. So Jesus, I think in this story, I truly believe Jesus is just using this analogy